Joining me now is best-selling author Douglas Murray. His latest book on democracies and death cults, Israel and the Future of Civilization, hit the shelves last month. Make sure you get a copy. Douglas, let's start in the US with the Democrats, who are a broken party right now. They're leaderless, they're rudderless, and their solution to that is to spend $20 million to research how to win back American men. Yes, the plan, codenamed SAM, or Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, promises to use the funds to, and I quote, study the syntax, language and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. Douglas, you're a man. What is your advice to the Democrats? How can they win back male voters?
One of them, I'd start by not talking about the virality of male spaces. I think that's immediately going to be off-putting. It's so strange, yes, isn't it, Rita? I mean, tens of millions of dollars, you know, well done to the consultants who've squeezed that out of Democrat donors and others. It's really, I could save them the money. I'll tell them now. All you have to do is to show male voters in America, as with female voters, simply that you're on their side, that you don't hate them, that you don't look down on them or regard them as second-class citizens. You don't think they should move aside or stay in their lane or hand over privilege or anything else. You just demonstrate that you're on their side and that you understand their concerns. And if you do understand their concerns, you don't then dismiss their concerns as being always racist, misogynistic, heteronormative, and so on. It's really so easy. But yeah, $20 million to some people who'll give worse advice than I just gave for free.
You should invoice, because I think that's far better than studying the syntax and virality of male spaces. Wow. Now let's go to Disney. There's reports that Disney and ABC bosses have urged the ladies of The View to just scale back some of their political commentary, perhaps tone down their anti-Trump diatribes, which can get a little bit demented. It's not gone well. Whoopi and co cannot bring themselves to even admit that there may be a problem or two in South Africa. Have a listen to this.
I made movies in South Africa. I've been in South Africa. I sent your son
to South Africa
to talk to people that I know who still live there. There's no white genocide, okay? There's not a genocide happening.
Douglas, I would love to see you on The View, but what's your response there to the ladies? Because Whoopi's made movies in South Africa, so everything's fine there.
Yes, absolutely. She must have really got a feel for the place on the movie set, I'm sure. It's such an example, actually, of what we were just discussing about this. I'm like, why can't they accept that the situation for many white South Africans is absolutely dire, particularly in farming communities? Why can't they accept that that might be the case and it's not a zero-sum game? I can see what they're doing. This is the classic anti-Trump movement thing. If Trump says something, you can never concede he might be onto something. You've got to say he's onto absolutely nothing and laugh off any issue he raises, including really serious ones. You know, people like the presenters on The View can say things like, well, why isn't he focusing on genocides elsewhere? Why isn't he focusing on X human rights abuse? Why human rights abuse? Look, there are two things about this. One is, again, this is not a zero-sum game. Because many black South Africans get murdered in South Africa, mainly by other black South Africans, does not mean that no white South African suffers as well. And as for the sort of thing of prioritizing, I'd say that, you know, there's a very obvious answer that the Trump administration can give to this, which is there are many countries in the world that prioritize all sorts of human rights concerns, but very few that have even noticed the human rights violations against white South African farmers. And so, yes, if nobody else is mentioning it, if it's not the cool thing, the cool genocide for the View, women to do, then nevertheless, it's perhaps even more so. It's something worth highlighting.
I just don't understand this complete hostility to granting asylum to a few dozen Afrikaners, South African farmers, who are going to assimilate well into any Western country, who speak English, who work hard, who are generally very law-abiding, Douglas. Why are people who are so pro-migrant, pro-open borders hostile to this? Is it purely a skin colour issue?
I think it's very largely that. And there's another underlying thing about this story, which I'm sure, like me, Rita, you can't help but notice. It's something along the lines of, it happens with many examples of hypocrisy like this, which is it's not happening. It might be happening, but even if it were happening, it's not as bad as this other thing that's happening. And then the move to, okay, maybe it is happening, but they kind of deserve it in some way. I think that is underlying a lot of the coverage of this story. Yeah. And generally speaking, if a group is being murdered or is being targeted for annihilation, the idea that you excuse it by saying that underneath all of this, they're guilty by dint of their skin color, of something that happened a generation ago now, 2 generations ago, would ordinarily be regarded as morally obscene. So why isn't it here?
Well, collective guilt seems to be in fashion right now. Let's go to Canada now, where King Charles delivered this land acknowledgement.
I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and the Shinabeg people. It is my great hope that in each of your communities and collectively as a country, a path is found toward truth and reconciliation in both word and deed.
Douglas, what do you make of that? Is it necessary, desirable? Is it akin to a humiliation ritual?
I don't go in for the land acknowledgement stuff, but I'm in the fortunate position of not being the king and having to never make any misstep or upset any tribe, or literal or metaphorical. I mean, I thought that was a very dignified speech by the king. The one thing I would always think whenever I hear a land acknowledgement is it's for people in a country to decide if they want to do that sort of thing, for Canadians, for Americans, Australians, and others. The thing that I always think when it does happen is I wonder whether this could ever happen in Britain or in Europe. Would it ever be the case that there would be a land acknowledgement to the First Peoples, the indigenous peoples of England, for instance, on whose land people stand? I never really hear that. Maybe there will come a time when things are so bad in Britain and Europe that people do start doing that, but it'll be some way off, I think. And there'll be a lot of retribution in the meantime.
There's parts of London you could start doing that right now. Just on the king, he is in North America. We know his son is in North America. There's a bit of conjecture that there may be a reunion with the prodigal son. Seems unlikely, Douglas, but would you like to see reconciliation, given the king is battling cancer and he's not seen his son or his grandchildren for some time?
Yes, I mean, it's a very sad story on a family level, on a human level, that you know, the king has been ill, as you mentioned, and his second son is missing, and deliberately missing. I think, as you and I have said before, Rita, the real problem lies in the problem that Prince Harry and Meghan have created, which is it's very hard, I think, it would be very hard for any family to reconcile with and have private discussions with a family member, which at any point could be turned into another volume of autobiography and memoir, or into a Netflix series. What could possibly be said? How could Harry be trusted, given the fact that he's in constant dealings with media platforms and constantly sounding off against his family. It's extremely hard to see. Unless Harry and Meghan learnt the amazing trick of sometimes choosing to be quiet, it's very hard to see how the king or the royal family can trust them.
Now, in the UK, we are seeing the rise of reform. Their surge in the polls continues. In a first-past-the-post system, they're right now well in front in a number of polls, ahead of Labor, comfortably ahead of the Tories. Is this the end of the two-party system in the UK? Can they maintain this momentum all the way to the election?
I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see, Rita. As you know, the electoral system in the UK is extremely cruel to third parties, insurgent parties, and so on. It's not like list systems like the Netherlands has, for instance, where there can constantly be parties that come up and take over and either rule well or otherwise and get chucked out or kept in power. It's just not like that in the UK. There's always been this expectation that the two-party system can't be broken. And I suppose people think back to the 1970s and 80s and the SDP and so on. But actually, of course, sometimes a party does die. And that was, of course, the case with the old Liberal Party more than a century ago. And the Labour Party, the Conservative Party. There's no law of nature that means they have to survive. The interesting thing for reform really will be whether or not they can demonstrate that it's not a one-man party, that it's not just Nigel Farage, and without him, there really isn't a party. Nigel Farage is an extremely brilliant campaigner, exceptionally brilliant campaigner, and an incredibly talented politician. But in order to get anywhere near actually looking like he's a figure that can head a government, he'd have to surround himself with many people of an equal or similar caliber. And he's just never been able to do that. And I'm afraid that the infighting that reform has already seen is a sort of a bad sign in that regard. Inevitably, a successful party has to be a kind of coalition, but also just has to have a lot of talent in it. Can Nigel Farage spend the next couple of years building that up? Perhaps. If he does, he's a serious threat to the Labour and Conservative two-party system. If he doesn't, I'm afraid it'll just be another of those strange electoral polling burps that happens usually midway through a very unsuccessful government like this one in the UK.
Now, you've been good enough to give some free advice to the Democrats tonight. If you could do the same for our Liberal Party, they're in crisis right now. They've had a landslide election loss, and they don't really seem to know, Douglas, who they are and what they stand for. There's a lot of advice that they should veer to the centre or left. But what would your advice be to a centre-right party that seems to be having a bit of an identity crisis right now in Australia?
Yeah, they are, aren't they? And of course, just like other centre-right parties around the world, they'll always get bad advice from people who wish them ill, and they'll take it. I'm afraid that's a routine
every time
with centre-right parties. Every time. There'll be people who would never vote for the Liberals who will say, I think what you need to do is to come further to the left and nearer to me and so on. No, I mean, for the party to be successful, like all centre-right parties, you have to show a set of things. You have to show a faith in the country, a love of the country, an understanding of people's need for belonging and aspiration, and much more. Particularly, by the way, that second one. I always say to politicians of the centre-right that, the left always has this very, very powerful tool, which it uses, my goodness, how it uses it, which is the tool of resentment. You've got to resent the rich man. You've got to resent these people, the powerful, so on. But centre-right parties have a very, very useful thing, which they should be able to play back at it, which is aspiration. That is to show a means by which people who work hard in Australia, follow the rules, will actually be rewarded for it. And we'll see if they can make that happen. I hope they do. It's one of the most successful parties electorally in the West, and it deserves to have a future. But we'll see. As I said earlier, there's no law of nature that means that these parties just survive. They have to justify it. I'm not sure the Liberal Party's done a great job of that.
Fantastic advice there, Douglas Murray. Thank you so much for your time.
It's a great pleasure.